Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a little bit of a different video, just more of an overview and discussion to share with you guys. This right here is a full custom USA made Brian Nadeau Sharp by Design Arch Nemesis. This is the crown jewel of my collection. It is roughly a $1,600 custom knife, and I cherish it very much. But we're not here to talk about this one today. We're here to talk about this one. Holy moly. This is one of the most amazing things that I have ever seen. I'm not new to the knife world. I've been here for a bit. There are certainly people who have been here longer, and certainly people who have experienced more than me. But I think it's safe to say I've experienced quite a bit. This is probably the most magnificent pocket knife that I have handled. Now, this is not going to, if you're new to my channel, right, I do reviews and I do overviews and I do unboxings and stuff like that. I'm an enthusiast, right? So I like to take a close look at the enthusiast elements. This knife was certainly made for enthusiasts. While it is absolutely capable, the materials are not just decorative, they are absolutely 100% performance oriented, and so are the tolerances. If the gentleman who owns this knife, his name is Kyle, decides to actually use it, it will definitely serve him well, though I doubt he will. This particular one is has absolutely been embellished. It's one of the more embellished knives, or one of the most embellished knives that I've ever seen, but the way that it is done is simply amazing. And it drives the point home that I've been making for a long time, and that's that Brian Nadeau is, in my experience, one of the best custom knife makers that has ever existed. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. The nice thing about Brian Nadeau, and, you know, truthfully, any custom knife maker, is that generally speaking, you're gonna have options, right? If you actually are able to get on the books, or you're able to, you know, somehow have a choice when it comes to what's being made. You have a choice between more of a minimalist aesthetic, right? There's gonna be a lot of people just saying the general, like, that looks like a gas station knife, right? It's just because, for whatever reason, they associate color with gas station knives, and it's probably because, you know, most people see gas station knives before they see anything else in the knife world. It's just kind of, that just ends up being the foundation for that opinion. But it's not just color, right? It's the materials behind the color. But more importantly, what creates these incredible, these amazing, these really, really high price tags is the amount of work that goes into it, right? You can put a lot of work into something, and, you know, what comes out the other end oftentimes isn't necessarily spectacular, right? Somebody could spend 100 or 200 hours creating a knife, and then, you know, sometimes what comes out the other end is very sloppy. I have literally never experienced, and at this point I've handled quite a bit of Brian Nadeau's production collaboration work and his custom work. This is now the third Arch Nemesis I've handled, and probably the fifth or sixth custom that I've handled. And then, of course, I own a couple of my production collaboration knives, including the this is the Evo Typhoon, which was a Riot collab, and then the Mini Tempest, which was also a Riot collab. Some people get confused about, you know, Sharp by Design stuff. They assume that everything that is Sharp by Design is a Riot collab, or that it is made by Riot. Untrue. He has his Riot production collaborations where they're his designs and they are made by Riot. These are substantial. These are still very expensive knives, but they're substantially less expensive. And then he has the stuff that he makes just one at a time, you know, here in the United States in his shop. And this is a rare example where his custom stuff is actually more perfect than the actual, you know, production collaboration, which is crazy because these knives are made by Riot, which is, they're probably the most precision production OEM on the planet. I mean, these are just spectacular, but his customs are more spectacular. So, there are, I'm going to tell you right now, you know, the number of custom Arch Nemesis out there, you know, I don't know exactly how many. I think it's around 100, which to some people is going to sound really, really high. The number that look like this is very low. Mine here is titanium, and then we have a double compound dagger blade. Very much love this. You know, I'm really into sort of the all one color, so kind of the Terminator look. I really like that. Love his texturing, things like that. This guy is made out of, this is zircotite, or zirconium titanium Damascus, which some people are going to like the look of it, some people are not. But it is definitely a more exotic material when we're talking about knives. And then the actual scales are solid zirconium, and in this case they're actually textured. They're like micro textured, which is beautiful. The main thing here that I want to highlight is the blade. This is a carbon fiber weave that has been milled onto the blade. What makes this special is that it is one of, I can't remember correctly, I think there are 6 of these that exist and 6 that will ever exist. Unless he, you know, changes up his system. The reason apparently is that, you know, the bits that he uses to mill this onto the blade, he destroys them in the process. And it's quite literally too expensive of a thing to do. And it's too time consuming and too costly on his end. And, you know, the end result is, it's absolutely beautiful. This is amazing. You know, that's why we don't see this type of thing. I mean, you know, people are going to argue, well, you can see laser engraving that'll look, that's one thing, but to actually mill a texture into the blade is an entirely different thing. And I think the reason, I mean, I'm not a machinist. I don't make knives, right? I mean, I'm actually, you know, I know very little when it comes to that side of things, but I can tell you pretty confidently that the reason that we don't see this anywhere else in the knife world is simply because it is exactly that. It is too costly to do, and it destroys equipment. So this one in particular is very special. I don't know exactly how much this is worth, because it's one of those things that it initially had, you know, there was a table price for it. And then because the Arch Nemesis itself is so, you know, I mean, right now, if you wanted an Arch Nemesis, it's just like, you know, it's one of the more difficult knives to get in the entirety of the knife world right now. You almost just have to get lucky. A lot of them are auctioned. But the Arch Nemesis by themselves, like these custom knives, are pretty much automatically worth more than you paid if you get them directly from Brian Nadeau. The moment that you acquire these, they simply become more automatically. And it's not one of those things where you have to wait around for the right buyer in order to make more. They just are. These are literally worth more money and will almost instantly sell for substantially more than what you pay. And I'm not trying to motivate people into, you know, acquiring these and flipping them. I'm saying what factually is. This is the type of demand that's built around these knives is crazy, and it is absolutely and completely justified because this work is just unparalleled. We don't see this type of thing. This particular one being one of what I assume is, you know, maybe 6 that exist with this type of milling, right, is even more so. So basically what I'm saying here is the price is just, it's out the window. I have no idea. It's multiple thousands, might be 4, 5. It could be more than that, right? But it's hard to actually wrap my head completely around something like this. And it's you know, this is a perfect example of something that makes it so difficult to review a knife like this. You know, some people define review like, well, if you're not testing it, if you're not out there pounding it through a block of wood, then you're not reviewing it. No, I disagree completely. This is not the this is not the type of thing that was made for you know, that audience. This is the type of thing that was made for people who very specifically want these enthusiast details, right? So the only people who are going to be interested in buying something like this are people who are buying it specifically for these very intricate and complex details, which I'm going to do my best to cover despite not fully being able to wrap my head around everything. It's the same type of precision that we see in my Arch Nemesis, where we have this beautiful sort of lipped ring around the pivot, Brian Nadeau signed pivot there. These are made in a way, I think they're like press fit and then very, very carefully, you know, tightened and adjusted to make sure that everything is perfect. they are made in a way that he does not want you adjusting them. It's almost like it's almost like he's taunting himself through his own work, you know, like he's like daring himself to not be absolutely perfect, right? Especially with this blade. I mean, we're talking not just a dagger ground blade, but we're talking one that's got a fuller, and within the fuller we have these holes that are milled, and then the fuller tapers down to a center line, and that center line goes perfectly out to the tip. On top of that, you have this milled texture on either side that will absolutely highlight if something is not exactly right. And it's just amazing to me that this level of precision can actually be obtained. I almost always expect, you know, for anybody who has not handled a custom knife or a knife, you know, in this territory, that, as you could guess, as the price goes up, you know, anybody is going to expect better and better and better precision and execution, right? And so you become more picky, you become more of a, you know, a flaw detective, and you comb over these things, you know, to look for little things that are not perfect. And in my experience, you know, with a lot of these custom knives, even some of them that have CNC elements like this, some of this is obviously CNC elements. Some people are going to say custom knives are only handmade, whatever, however you define them. In my opinion, you can have a full custom knife and still have CNC elements, right? I mean, something like this is still going to take an enormous amount of work. It still qualifies in my book as, you know, custom. You can have your own definition of custom, that's fine. But I still expect to find, you know, when there's more detail, when there's more opportunity for something to be off, obviously I expect to find it. I actually expect there to be, you know, I expect less flaws in production knives, right? Something like this that's manufactured by Riyadh. I expect substantially less imperfection on something like this versus a custom knife. It's just one of those almost ironic things that you just have to accept if you're gonna, you know, if you're gonna be paying thousands of money, you know, thousands of dollars for something that's going to have a lot of handwork, a lot of human work in there. You know, there are exponentially more opportunities for failure or flaw or error, right? Not with this. This is just spectacular. I really thought that you know, that sort of what I was describing there, from what I have witness just or you know, that's just the stuff I've handled, seeing that as knives get more expensive, you know, it's just like more opportunity for letdown, more opportunity for buyer's remorse. Like, you know, I've always, the most money I've ever spent on a pocket knife personally was close to about $2,000, and I keep telling myself, well, you know, for every dollar I spend over that, it's just going to be that much more painful to acquire something that, you know, I find out it's got a little bit of a booger on it, right? And then I find out, you know, that the stuff like this exists, and I'm like, well, dang it. You know, now I have something else that I want to save for, something else that I want to acquire. Sorry, the robot vacuum upstairs is clearly running over something he's not supposed to. But anyways, I just, you know, really, this is more of a, you know, presentation and just talk, more sort of reinforcement of my original idea that, you know, Brian Nadeau is just unmatched in my book. I've handled a lot of stuff that I think is really spectacular, and I mean that, but this is beyond spectacular. I'm gonna give you guys another close-up look of everything. In fact, I'm gonna zoom up so that we can really, you know, appreciate what's going on here. This is it's one of those things where I have to come up with creative dialogue while we look over this, and this is the part, as much as I talk, it's one of those things that I'm really not the best at. I really appreciate how, you know, and mine isn't nearly as polished, but there are still areas like right here, the top of the titanium is a little more polished, but we have mirror polishing on the top of, you know, each of these flipper tabs, right? So we have the mirror flats and the mirror bevels, and then it comes down to like more of a machine satin on this side, which is nice. That contrast is really, really cool, especially as it meets up. Look at this, just this crazy little angle right here that meets up with this area where the pattern starts that he has milled into the blade, and how perfect that transition is, right? Or areas like this, right? So much of an opportunity. There are so many little teeny tiny lines here that if they were boogered up, would just really look poopy, right? But there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. Amazing here too, the polish and the transition on the zirconium from the flat or the smooth areas to the textured areas, and how abrupt those areas are. It's just suddenly textured, but nothing looks goofy, right? Nothing looks out of place. And you can see little teeny tiny diamond texturing there. It's just absolutely fantastic. I love this line here, how this is milled out. It's almost hard to tell initially that this is a different piece. And I know it's obvious because we have solid zirconium transitioning into titanium Damascus that has zirconium infused, right? So it's obviously not one piece. But, and the screw here is a giveaway that, it's an inlay. But you can see here the little line, right, that's milled into the zirconium. It's separating the zirconium, and the titanium Damascus goes right through the middle. And unless you look closely, it's really hard to tell exactly where that seam is. It almost looks like it's legitimately part of the knife. This is also textured, which is really cool. I love that. The pocket clip has been anodized, sort of a, gold to orange to purple to indigo to match some of the colors in the titanium Damascus. And these are the different colors in the titanium. This is, it's basically, for anybody who doesn't know, it is titanium that is created the same way that Damascus is made. And then it's anodized. And when you anodize titanium, it brings out all these different colors, because we have, in this case, just as the case with Damascus, you have two different compositions of titanium, so they anodize at different rates, and so you get these different colors. It's just really cool. Even if you don't like, the really, really colorful look. Sorry, I'm just cleaning this off. Even if you don't like that colorful look, it's still really interesting, right? It's not just the material itself. This is a great example of something that I think even people who are new to the knife world can understand, that the materials alone will not dictate the value completely. Obviously, there is a huge difference between the materials on this knife and the exact same materials on knives that we have seen for, we've got Chinese production companies that are making knives with these exact same materials, and they'll total out to, $600, $700, $800, $900, maybe $1,000, right? You're not going to find these materials in, all together in knives that cost less than that. But we see that stuff, but we don't see it take this form. And this form is one that takes a long time to create, right? If you were able to pump these things out and make, hundreds and hundreds at a time or thousands at a time, then obviously they, wouldn't go for so much. But they take time to create. My understanding is that Brian Nadeau and Sharp by Design as a company is a single entity. It's just him doing this. So it's Brian Nadeau and his passion and his expertise, his masterful expertise going into every single one of these. And it doesn't look like he's letting up. Anything that you're seeing here that looks like a blemish, by the way, it's just fingerprints, because all of the surfaces are so polished that it's just going to pick stuff like that up. It does still include his legendary lipped detent. There's no actual detent ball. It's just a lipped piece of steel that acts as the detent, and it creates for a flipping action that is completely and totally different than anything else. You guys have heard me talk about this when we're talking about the production knives or his custom knives. So it's the same thing. It's just got a different, much more crisp and deliberate breakaway from the closed position, and a very satisfying sound when they lock out. They all have this sort of distinct, at least the ones with the flipper tabs, they all have this very distinct and different sounding and feeling deployment. And it's just amazing. It's really cool to see that something that is custom made here in the United States can still surpass, We're talking about we've got so many of these incredibly precision-based OEMs, you know, these Chinese companies that are able to pump really amazing stuff out in mass quantities, right? And, you know, seemingly in a way where there is no flaw whatsoever. Everything is just absolute perfection. It's amazing to see that something like this can still be made. I'm reducing it a little bit, but in you know, by one guy in a garage. It's just amazing to me, and it's worth highlighting. It's worth talking about. So you know, you can think of this particular knife how you want. You know, you can, or the way that it looks, the aesthetic. You can think of it how you want. But I don't know. I have so much respect for this type of thing. It's truly amazing. I don't know that there's any way for me to do a knife like this justice. I know I've been sitting here talking for 22 minutes, and there are very few people who are still watching. That's not really what I'm concerned with. But there's no way for me to do this knife justice. Even if I were to sit here and talk for 2 hours, I can't do it. It's one of those things that very few people will get to experience, and it's a bummer, you know. I wish that everybody could experience this, because it's the type of thing that makes, you know, people kind of, you know, if you're wandering into the knife world for the first time, and, you know, initially you discover, what, wait, knives, there are knives that cost $100? What, why, right? You go through that, and then, you know, you complain for a little bit, and then you eventually, you know, succumb to it, and you buy your own, and then you slowly climb the ladder, right. Well, still, the vast majority of people who spend any amount of time in the knife world, even if it is for a long time, they look at these knives in the multi-$1,000 territory and they go, okay, fine, I can understand, you know, multi-$100 knives, but multi-$1,000 knives, how much better could it actually be? The key to that understanding is very difficult to find, but this is it. This is the type of knife to where pretty much anybody is going to pick it up and go, oh my God, I get it. I don't mean I don't get it, but I get it. You know, it's really great, really awesome stuff. It makes me happy that I still do what I do, which is review knives on YouTube, and it makes me extremely motivated and curious about what's to come in the future, especially from people like Brian Nadeau. So, Kyle, thanks again for letting me borrow this magnificent example of master craftsmanship. This will, of course, go back to Kyle here very soon. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. I was happy to share this one with you. Really excited about this one. That's going to be pretty much it today. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.